G'day and welcome to Hooked on Sport, South Australia's local sports podcast. It's the 26th November and time to check in with Ben Hook to see what's caught his eye this week. G'day, Hookie.
Hey, Wallace, bit of breaking news just going on. Your footy club, the Sydney Swans, it looks like their coach has quit, which is quite remarkable at this time of year. So let's timestamp this. It's Tuesday the 26th. We're early-ish morning, and it's just been revealed that he's announcing to his players he's done, and he'll formally announce it this afternoon. A bit of an end of an era for what's been a You've had a bit of fun as a Swans fan, haven't you?
Oh, we've had a cracking run for, something like 14 years he's been in charge. Sure, there's been a couple of recent grand finals that we've all forgotten. On the whole, what a contribution to the mighty Swans.
Yeah, there'll be some Port Adelaide fans who'll be thinking, gee, why didn't our coach move on a little bit quicker? Hinckley's an interesting one, isn't he? I mean, similar to Longmire, has been so successful for so long. Longmire has a premiership. Ken doesn't. I really feel like those two absolute disappointments in those last two grand finals, 22 and 24, are probably what's been the catalyst here.
Yeah, I just hope it doesn't sort of be the mark of the man, because his contribution to the club over that tenure has been unbelievable.
200 games, last game in the 1999 grand final. Lucky to make it as well. He was pretty much shot by then. So what a great career he's had. Premiership player, premiership coach. Yeah, he should hold his head high. Talking about holding their head high, Ebony Marinoff. That's a great story.
Amazing.
What a champion she has been. So for those who haven't caught up with it, she won the AFLW Best and Fairest last night. It's synonymous with Erin Phillips, who's won a couple of them now. Ebony Marinoff has her first. She is an incredible footballer, tough, hard, but resilient as well, just not injury prone despite the way she plays her football. Wallace, I think the most interesting thing about her, this league's been going, I think this is the 8th season. She's a 7-time All-Australian. Mark Rasciuto, for everything he did in football, was an 8-time All-Australian. So Ebony Marinoff, and I understand that when the league first started, it was only a handful of teams, 8 teams I think the competition started with, so there's a few more opportunities to become an All-Australian. But she's going to finish her career, you would imagine, possibly pushing 10 All-Australian selections, which is incredible. Yeah, and Mark Rasciuto, in the conversation for the greatest male crow of all time, has 8. What an absolute superstar Ebony Marinoff is. And a couple of big wins for Port Adelaide as well, because Matilda Scholes won Mark of the Year and Rising Star. So big night for South Australian footy.
A massive night. Now, there's a local sailor set for an around-the-world voyage.
Yeah, well, let's get into the tin tacks of what we do, Wallace, which is the local stuff. And there's a lad called Dan Turner who I think might be on the way today, heading over to Europe, where he will begin the 2025 Mini Globe race. What is the Mini Globe race? Good question. It is a multi-leg race where you sail around the world in a boat that you built yourself, and you are the only person in it. Now, you and I are golf fans, mate, and you can play the odd round of golf on your own. But imagine playing golf on your own with the sticks you had to make yourself for 6 months straight, because that's essentially what Dan Turner signed himself up for. It is an incredible story. He'd never built a boat before in his life, never had any experience in it, and basically had to follow YouTube clips on how to build this boat. It's 5.8 meters. Took him about 4 years to build, spent most of the time building it in his driveway. And this will now be entered in the Mini Globe race, which starts somewhere in Spain or Portugal, I think. They then sail across to Antigua, and then from Antigua there's a whole host of stages where they come all the way through, and I think they finish in Australia. It takes about 6 months. You can imagine the amount of safety provisions they have to have for a single-handed, very, very small vessel. You can imagine trying to get some sleep while you've still got the boat moving and all of those sorts of things as well, and the potential to be in shipping channels and all of those sorts of things. So Dan Turner, South Australian, he's a bit of an adventure racer. He's done a lot of ultra marathons, and then two-handed did a sail from Melbourne to Tokyo, but this is the first time he's done his own race on his own and doing it in his own boat that he built himself. So good luck, Dan. Going to be an amazing story. Yeah, I think it's 273 days alone at sea. Dan he's a special sort of character, the guy who is desperate to do these sorts of stretch yourself beyond what you think might be human capability. Family really supportive. He's written a book about it, got some great sponsors. It will be something to relive when he gets back.
Yeah, it'll be amazing to watch him on his journey. Now, SA has a back-to-back world champion powerlifter.
Yeah, so this is probably one that isn't going to get any airplay outside of your and my chat, but his name is Jeff Lovelock. He was a latecomer to powerlifting, only started as a 32-year-old, and I had the conversation with him a couple of years ago where it was actually only a year ago now, he really only took it up, Wallace, because he was just trying to find, he was getting to that age, early to mid-30s, and couldn't find a sport or an exercise that he enjoyed and was prepared to stick with, but was still something that he could, I guess, get into in his, relative later years, if you like. And then he found powerlifting. The one thing he liked about it was you could continually see the numbers on the bar improve, that you could have a personal best and do a bit better, and you could compare yourself to the previous month or the previous year. And he had a really obvious gauge on how he was traveling. So he continued to improve, and he found himself at the World Championships last year. This is 2023. It was in the United States. He was in the 68 kilo weight category. He had no idea of any of his competitors, didn't know if he was going to be first or last. Well, he won it. He won it for his weight division. This year, he's gone back in a heavier weight category, so he's under 75 kilos this time around. Had a bit more of an understanding of who he was up against this time, but as a 37-year-old, he's gone back-to-back, won himself a second World Powerlifting Championship. So this is with the World Powerlifting Congress. So I'll just give you his lifts. Have a listen to this. He squatted, so he's under 75 kilos, so he's not a big guy by any stretch. He squatted 220 kilograms. He benched 130 kilograms. He deadlifted 230 kilograms, gave him a total of 580. First place in his weight class and second place in overall men's. So you can imagine there are 120 kilo blokes who lift a heck of a lot more than that. But for his weight, he was second place overall and first in that particular weight category. I think he grew up on the Yorke Peninsula. I reckon he lives in Adelaide now, but certainly grew up on Yorke Peninsula. And here he is now, a double world champion. If you're enjoying this podcast, I'd encourage you to take a listen to Beyond the Club. It's a project I've been working on with Flinders University. Now I co-host it with Professor Sam Elliott, and we break down all the latest research on how to maximise the experience of junior and club athletes. There's a range of resources, special guests, and cutting-edge info on how you can make your club a safer, happier place for your kids and their club mates. Beyond the Club, wherever you get your podcasts.
Now, Major League Sixers, can you give us a wrap-up of what happened over the weekend?
Major League Sixers is the Olympic version of lacrosse. There used to be two versions of lacrosse, the outdoor version played by 10 people and the indoor version, I think, played by 5, and this is a bit of a hybrid of both. It's the sport that will go to the Olympics for Los Angeles 2028, and Lacrosse Australia put together, out of scratch, a 5-team franchise competition that was played at Marden Stadium in Adelaide Thursday, Friday, Saturday, just gone. The franchises were all invented. So Perth, Adelaide, Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, they all had their own nicknames, their own colours. The uniforms looked absolutely incredible. It was done completely on a draft, Wallace. So it wasn't like the Adelaide Red Bellies could hoard a whole heap of South Australians or the Perth Manta Rays could hoard a whole heap of Western Australians. So a lot of the players, for example, our best women's player is arguably Olivia Parker, and she was the captain of the Sydney Seahawks. And South Australia's number one coach is Trish Adams. She was the coach of that franchise as well. So whereas Stacey Morlang, big name in Victoria, she was the Adelaide Red Bellies coach, and Ashton Hiron, who's one of Australia's best players, was Adelaide's number one player, despite the fact that she's grown up in, born and bred Melbourne. So a lot of the players only met on Wednesday. They started playing games on Thursday, and I was stunned that by Saturday night, the finals, so this is the men's and women's grand final, had the third place playoffs as well. It was like a showdown, Port versus Crows. The rivalry had grown from nothing to everything. The team spirit was just incredible. I was doing the ground announcing for them, and I was set up on the players' side of the field behind the technical officials' benches. And it was quite remarkable just listening to how these guys and girls bought into it. It was amazing. It's a thrilling sport. It's 4 8-minute quarters, so it's all done in 32 minutes. It's going to be perfect for the Olympics because you're in and out. I think it's 10 a team, only 6 on at any one time. So the players are rapidly rotating players. It's very, very fast moving. I think it's going to be a great TV product. It's pretty spectacular because a lot of the top end players can, with their sticks, throw around the ball quite creatively. So it'll be good fun to watch. It's tough as well. A lot of big collisions between some of the big name players. In fact, the crowd really got into it when Ashton Hiron bowled over Olivia Parker, and it was right in front of the grandstand. So there was a lot of spirit going on there. And then probably the third point I'd make about it is that we are going to see maybe 4 or 5 South Australians become Olympians in the next
brilliant.
3 years, which is quite incredible. So there were 3 South Australians, I beg your pardon, who made the All-Star 6 amongst the men and the women. Jack Price scored 4 goals in the grand final for the Perth Manta Rays, and he was in the All-Star team. Olivia Parker, as I mentioned, she's won 3 Benithan medals as the best and fairest lacrosse player in South Australia. We've talked about Olivia before. So she was in that team of the All-Star team. And Jordan Watts is a great story. She was the goalkeeper for the Sydney Seahawks and did an incredible job. She's a diminutive little kid, and often it's more bigger people who are the goalkeeper. But yeah, she's just very, very quick with her stick. So does a really good job for someone quite small. Her father, Tony, is the commentator for lacrosse in South Australia and really Lacrosse Australia. In fact, he's so good. He's very witty, unique style. But I think you might find that Tony Watts could be calling his daughter Jordan at Olympic Games, a bit like the Canoe family.
Yes, Foxes.
Yes, yeah. Jess Fox and Naomi Fox and their father, who was calling all of the action. So the Watts family would be a good watch as well. But anyway, Major League Sixes, I was absolutely sold. And a lot of traditionalists in lacrosse are sold as well that this is going to be the future of the game. And I would almost argue that having pressure put on them by the Olympic Committee to sort of make a smaller, faster version of the game might actually be what leads lacrosse to some real mainstream success. The old format of the game, there's no shot clock. You can throw the ball around for a minute and a half and not make a shot, and it can be a little bit staid at times.
Yep.
But the way you have to get a shot away within 30 seconds with a shot clock really makes this sport. So yeah, I loved it. I really enjoyed every minute of it, which was great.
Well, fingers crossed there will be 4 South Australians in the Olympic squad. Now, Hookie, in our very early days of Hooked on Sport, we interviewed a legend of hockey. And she's set for retirement.
Holly Evans has called time on her career as a hockey player. She played for the Hockeyroos in 2010, Wallace. So we're going back 13 years ago now, and here she is still playing club and state level hockey. She played her last game for the Adelaide Fire against Brisbane on Saturday evening. She, of course, has played for the SA Suns before the competition was revamped, and is a player for the Northeast Warriors, and essentially, the club legend of the Northeast Warriors, without doubt. It's a bit of an end of a golden era of South Australian hockey. So the SA Suns, as they were known then, won the National League in 2011, and that spawned a number of Hockeyroos throughout the subsequent 13 years. So Bianca Greenshields, Georgie Parker, Alison Peake, Carrie McMahon, Elise Stacey, and Jane Claxton. Now, Jane Claxton probably goes in the conversation as our greatest ever Hockeyroos alongside Alison Peake and Juliette Haslam. So that was the era that Holly came from. Pretty much every one of those players is retired now. Holly's the last one of them to go. She's not going to be lost to hockey. She's the sassy high-performance coach for hockey. She actually splits her time with a doctorate in exercise physiology at Flinders University. So she is Dr. Holly Evans. She's as sharp off the field as she is on, if you like, Wallace, but just a cherished hockey identity. And she's going to be missed from one side of the pitch, but very much a big player on the other side of it.
Hookie, there's a former AFL umpire now reaching highs in another sport.
Yeah, Richard Williams. If you're a SANFL football follower, and you have been for the last 20 years, then you will know the name Richard Williams. He was the umpire that seemed to be doing every SANFL game. Has probably received more boos than anyone else in the history of South Australian sport, dear old Richard Williams. 459 SANFL games, 56 AFL games, 11 SANFL grand finals. Post-retirement, he was actually involved in scoring for the West Orange Cricket Club because his son, Ben, was a rising star as a cricketer and played a little bit of A grade. So that got him sort of involved in cricket. Ben has kind of moved on from cricket because, would you believe, he went into football umpiring and did his first SANFL grand final a couple of months ago. So that was quite a big story for the Williams family, that son Ben was following in Dad Richard's footsteps with his first SANFL grand final. In the meantime, Dad has been quietly taking up cricket umpiring. So having been a star football umpire, he's now a cricket umpire. He was umpiring the Adelaide versus Port Adelaide game on the weekend. I just checked in with Sarah Fry, who oversees officialdom in South Australian cricket, and she said that he's now done 18 A-grade games. He'd be in his mid-50s, so he's sort of not exactly the demographic that you're looking to make a start. But Richard Williams has such a pedigree and such an understanding of how to manage high-level sport. I'm going to put it to you now, Wallace. Wouldn't shock me to see him end up doing a first-class game or two here or there, or maybe a WBBL match, or even get involved in match refereeing, because he's got that sort of understanding of how to manage elite athletes and elite sport. He's demonstrated that with all of his career in the SANFL. So there you are, Richard Williams, umpiring A-grade cricket, having done 20-odd years of SANFL football, and who knows where he might end up.
What a bonus for cricket, because with that background, and the information, the resources he would have had with the SNFL and also the AFL, just bringing that across to cricket, that must be a great benefit.
Yeah, and I mean, I understand umpiring is always looking to diversify, so they're looking for younger males, they're looking for women to get involved, and even people from diverse backgrounds. Yeah, Richard Williams would be someone that I would not rule out as a possibility to make it to the next grade of cricket, just on the basis of the fact that he would be so dedicated to the craft.
Hookie, great to chat.
Love it, mate. Good on you. See you soon.
Run through the finishing tape on another episode of Hooked on Sport. If you've got a local sporting story to share, send us a message via our socials or by email hookedonsportpodcast@gmail.com. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast and let your mates know about us. Tell them to search Hooked on Sport to find Ben Hook and the team. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.